through old monasteries perched on Ethiopian mountains, through stories carried by wandering monks, through crumbling parchments sealed away from the world. A question that leads back to a single figure who bends the line between heaven and earth, an archangel known for delivering messages, but also for guarding secrets with equal strength. And the unsettling thought that begins this entire journey is simple. What if one of those secrets was never meant to be revealed? This idea hangs in the air like incense smoke, soft, fragrant, and heavy with meaning. Ethiopian tradition holds memories that reach further back than most people realize, stretching through kingdoms, emperors, and spiritual guardians who believed knowledge was not just information, but power. In these stories, there is a suggestion that an angel once carried a revelation so fierce, so world-shaking, that it had to be hidden from humanity because we were not ready to face it. And if that is true, then the place where it was buried would matter just as much as the message itself. Ethiopia, with its rock-carved churches and ancient libraries tucked inside caves, becomes more than a country. It becomes a vault. Imagine standing inside one of those caves. The air is cool, the walls etched by time, and a single candle flickers in the hands of a silent monk. His robe is worn, his footsteps careful across the stone floor. There is nothing modern in this place. No screens, no noise, no distractions. Only layers of history resting in the shadows. The monk knows he is not guarding simple parchment. He is guarding a warning, a puzzle, a truth that once crossed paths with an angel who refused to let it fall into reckless hands. Stories passed down through generations say Gabriel has always moved differently from the other messengers. His words in scripture appear suddenly, sometimes soft, sometimes filled with fire, always marking turning points in the human journey. But what many people forget is that the world of angels is not only about delivering hope or instructions. There are moments where silence becomes part of the divine order. Moments where a heavenly being is given a command not to reveal, but to conceal. And the idea that Gabriel could have been given such a task adds a tension that hangs over this entire documentary. Modern life is filled with spiritual noise. Opinions, confusion, questions about identity, about morality, about why the world feels like it's losing its sense of direction. People argue more, listen less, doubt more, trust less. In this chaos, ancient voices can feel distant, like echoes from a forgotten era. Yet the truth is the opposite. These old teachings have never been more relevant. Hidden inside the Ethiopian highlands is a timeline untouched by the filters of modern storytelling. There, history and faith meet without distortion. And in that meeting lies a thread that points toward a mystery connected to Gabriel, one that refuses to disappear no matter how many centuries try to bury it. Picture the early guardians of these scrolls, men who left behind the world's noise and chose silence, discipline, and prayer. Their days were shaped by chants and fasting, their nights spent copying sacred writings by candlelight. They believed every stroke of the pen carried weight. They guarded their scrolls not just from invaders, but from those who might misuse the knowledge hidden inside. Some spoke of pages that were rarely opened. Others hinted at writings so old that even the elders hesitated to speak of them. And within this guarded tradition, there is a rumor, a whisper, that one of these scrolls traces back to something Gabriel did not declare openly, but shielded. Something humanity was never meant to ask about, let alone understand. This idea alone reshapes the way we see Scripture. Gabriel appears at the birth of nations, the rise of prophets, the arrival of the Messiah. He carries messages that shift destinies with a single sentence. His presence causes kings to tremble and shepherds to look upward in awe. But what if his story also includes moments that were never recorded in plain sight? What if there were encounters, warnings, or heavenly conflicts that were hidden for fear of altering the human path too early? That possibility is the spark behind this investigation. A spark that lights up forgotten libraries, remote chapels, worn scrolls wrapped in cloth, and the quiet determination of those who protected them. This is not a journey of fantasy or exaggeration. It is a search for a thread of truth woven through Ethiopian memory, truth that survived invasions, fires, wars, and attempts to erase inconvenient history. The atmosphere around these ancient places tells its own story. Caves carved into mountains where light barely enters. Tunnels where monks walked barefoot for centuries. Stone altars stained with age. Rooms filled with the scent of old parchment. Each space holds a silence that feels alive, as if the walls themselves remember things no human tongue has spoken aloud in generations. When people say Ethiopia carries mysteries the world has overlooked, they are not pointing to myths. They are pointing to history that refuses to bow to outside interpretation. And through all of this, one figure casts a shadow, an archangel known to stand at heaven's gates, at the threshold of revelation, at the edge of cosmic conflict. His name appears in different languages and cultures, yet his role remains consistent: messenger, warrior, protector. But here he appears in a different light, as the keeper of a revelation sealed away from the world. A truth that could shake faith, reshape origin stories, and challenge long-held beliefs about the relationship between heaven and earth. This opening is the doorway. Ahead lies a path filled with hidden manuscripts, forbidden teachings, and testimonies from Ethiopian monks who claim that some scrolls were never written for the public. They were written for guardians. Written for those who understood the weight of secrets. Written for those who believed the world was not ready. And now we begin that path together. You matter to us. If you feel connected to this journey, support the channel. Subscribe. Share this story with someone who needs it. Help us reach 10,000 subscribers. If you feel moved, send a super thanks. And tell us your name, your city, and your time in the comments. Links for the Ethiopian 88-book Bible and the Book of Enoch are placed in the description. Ethiopia is a unique place where history seems to linger in the shadows, telling secrets that the rest of the world has long since forgotten. The mountains rise with a quiet grace, hiding monasteries carved into cliffs that have stood for centuries as guardians of sacred knowledge. Cities like Aksum in the northern highlands have been around for thousands of years. Stones with strange symbols carved into them tell of empires and kings who once lived in a world closer to the divine, where spiritual and earthly power were one and the same. Lalibela looks less like a city and more like a heavenly landscape, as if heaven itself had carved its will into the mountainside. In these hidden parts of the world, time moves differently. Every stone, worn step, and dark room seems to hold stories that the outside world shouldn't hear. There is a certain kind of silence in Ethiopia that lasts for hundreds of years. Debra Damo is quiet because it is on top of a steep cliff that can only be reached by rope and bravery. Inside its old walls, manuscripts are sealed, their pages delicate but eternal, thanks to generations of monks who have devoted their lives to secrecy and devotion. Some of these men have been fasting for decades. Their days are not measured by the sun but by the rhythm of prayer and meditation. They protect texts that contain truths so deep they could make people question everything they think they know about their own past. What is it about these scriptures that scares the world? It could be because these scrolls have survived fires, invasions, and hundreds of years of religious erasure, while the sacred records of the rest of the world were lost to neglect or conquest. In Ethiopia, forbidden scrolls survive where others have been destroyed. They are like whispers that won't be silenced, holding secrets that even the most devoted, curious, and scholarly people have not been able to fully understand. There are both legends and scriptures that link Ethiopia to the biblical world. People often talk about the land in ways that make it sound like they have a special connection to God. Ethiopia has been called a bridge between heaven and earth. The Old Testament talks about the ancient kingdom of Cush and its kings and people. The mysterious Queen of Sheba traveled through deserts and mountains to meet Solomon. Some people say that the Queen of Sheba brought gifts of gold, spices, and knowledge, which may have been secret teachings that were later hidden in the libraries of monasteries. The early Christian presence in Ethiopia is also impressive. Long before most of Europe accepted the new faith, Ethiopian kingdoms had built churches, made illuminated manuscripts, and started a tradition of deep spiritual literacy that would last through centuries of isolation. The air inside these monastic strongholds is almost like something from another world. Candlelight flickers against stone walls, lighting up manuscripts that are bound in leather and covered in glyphs and symbols that hint at truths that only a few people can see. The smell of incense and the faint taste of old parchment fill the air. Every move is on purpose, and every whisper has meaning. Here, knowledge is not just kept safe. It is kept safe as if reading it without permission could wake up powers that the mind is not ready for. Monks chant in languages that most people don't know, and their voices rise and fall in a rhythm that sounds like it comes from eternity. This is a reminder that what they protect is both holy and dangerous. You can feel the reverence in the air. Touching a manuscript without the right ritual is almost like a crime against the monks and the whole history of the world. People who have seen these secret stores, whether they are travelers or scholars, often come back changed. Some people talk about the manuscripts as if they were alive, full of knowledge that goes beyond words and needs to be read slowly, carefully, and with respect. Some people say that certain scrolls, hidden deep within the maze-like passages of Ethiopia's monasteries, hold angelic revelations, prophecies, and teachings that were never included in the main biblical canon. There are even stories of texts that carefully preserved events and people mentioned only briefly in the Bible or not at all by generations who knew how important memory and devotion were. It seems that these writings not only tell stories from the past, but also show a kind of spiritual architecture, a map of moral and cosmic truths that the outside world may not yet be ready to understand. When you think about how much trouble has happened in the area over the years, it's amazing that Ethiopia has been able to protect these old texts. There have been conquerors, empires, and religious leaders, but these scrolls are still safe, hidden away in rooms that are hard to find. This strength may be why both scholars and explorers are drawn to Ethiopia as if by some unseen force. There is an unspoken understanding that these lands hold something that other civilizations lost: the original pulse of faith, a memory of creation, divine interaction, and human responsibility that has survived because it was never meant to be fully exposed to the world. This hidden knowledge, the kind that exists in the space between shadows and light, where history and divinity meet, can be felt in every corner of Aksum, Lalibela, and Debra Damo. When you walk through these holy places, you can see why people say Ethiopia is the last place to keep biblical secrets. Every carved stairway, every frescoed wall, and every sealed manuscript is part of a long history that goes back thousands of years. It is a place where people have kept the whispers of angels safe, where devotion has turned into protection, and where the fragility of paper meets the strength of faith. The land itself seems to know what secrets it holds, as if the mountains and valleys remember things that other people have long since forgotten. When you see it, you get the feeling that the rest of the world has been blind to something important in Ethiopia. These secrets have always been there, waiting for the right time, or maybe the right person, to figure them out. Ethiopia still strikes this delicate balance between being open and mysterious, even today. Tourists and scholars can visit some places, but the most sacred rooms are still off-limits. People who visit often notice how different the busy cities are from the quiet monastic retreats, as if they are crossing a veil between two worlds. The true power of Ethiopian scripture is shown in this contrast. A culture that has kept knowledge safe by keeping it quiet, letting it survive, and only speak to those who are ready, making sure that its wisdom is not affected by the noise of the outside world. To see it is not just to see history. It is to stand at the edge of a hidden world where the sacred and the mortal meet, and where every scroll holds the weight of human faith and divine mystery. Gabriel is a person that almost everyone knows, but most people only know a small part of his life. In the West, he is often shown as the kind messenger, like the angel who brings good news to Mary or whispers prophecies to Daniel. He is also shown as a heavenly messenger who shows up at important times in human history. This polished and comforting picture hides a much more complicated being, a guardian who has a lot of responsibilities, sadness, and conflict that go beyond what the Bible says. In Ethiopian angelology, Gabriel is not just a messenger, he is also the keeper of the heavenly archive. This is a job that is so important that even a divine being has to take it seriously. His presence is not just for show. It is real, important, and often painful. He walks a fine line between revealing and hiding things, and his job is to keep truths safe that people may not be ready to hear yet. To fully understand Gabriel, you need to think about the stress that comes with his job. Ethiopian texts show a heavenly being who has to hide a lot of knowledge, unlike Western texts that focus on clarity and guidance. Some scrolls say that every move he makes is full of sadness and that he is tired because he knows secrets that could destroy civilizations. He has to keep cosmic balance and bear the burden of all the things that people don't know. His life is connected to moral and spiritual guidance, and this job is not without pain. He has to think about how his words will affect people, not just the person who hears them, but also the people who will hear them in the future. In these secret texts, Gabriel is sometimes shown as a person who is stuck between two worlds, part angel, part historian, part warden, and fully aware of how fragile human understanding is. He appears more often in the Ethiopian canon than in the Western Bible, which is a big difference. While Western texts focus on a few important events, Ethiopian manuscripts show that Gabriel's impact goes far beyond those events. People think he is writing down secret histories, keeping track of forbidden prophecies, and helping prophets whose stories never made it into the main canon. There are parts of the Bible that talk about protecting knowledge, keeping dangerous revelations under control, and watching over angels on earth. His name is mentioned in these parts. These texts show an angel who is fully aware of the risks of his mission, to deliver divine wisdom without making it too hard for people to understand. This is different from the simplified stories that are often taught in Sunday schools. This duality, protector and restrictor, defines him more than the public narrative lets on. The Ethiopian portrayal stands out because it focuses on Gabriel's human side. He isn't mortal, but he still feels regret, doubt, and sadness. Some manuscripts say that he stopped before giving a message because he felt the weight of the lives that would change as a result. There are stories of him crying softly in the shadows of heavenly archives, grieving the knowledge that must stay hidden and the truths that people aren't ready to face yet. It is a sadness that comes from necessity, not failure, and it is a realization that revealing something is as much a duty as it is a gift. These emotional aspects make him more human and connect heavenly and earthly experiences. They are almost completely missing from the clean versions of him in Western culture. Gabriel's job as keeper of the heavenly archive is closely related to keeping dangerous knowledge safe. Some scrolls say that he was involved in keeping secrets from getting into the wrong hands long before he told Mary about the birth of Christ. These texts suggest that knowing about certain events, beings, and fights in the sky could have caused a lot of people to panic, lose their morals, or become spiritually corrupt. His presence in Ethiopia's manuscripts emphasizes this mission. Here, ancient monks recorded not only human history but also the interactions between angels, humans, and the cosmic order itself. Gabriel is shown as both an observer and an enforcer, making sure that the line between divine knowledge and human access is always clear, even if it means putting himself in danger. In these texts, his relationship with important biblical figures is also complicated and has many sides. The Western canon mostly talks about his role with Mary or Daniel, but Ethiopian scriptures say that he had an impact on other prophets and spiritual leaders whose stories were lost or hidden over time. Some writings say that he even helped people find hidden scrolls by giving them cryptic advice that would later help keep knowledge from being lost forever. At these times, Gabriel is not obviously good or just teaching. He is strategic, often working behind the scenes to decide when to step in and when to stay out. This careful way of doing things shows how serious his duties are, and it makes him look like an angel who knows how important it is to keep the balance between revealing and disaster. Conflict is a big part of Gabriel's life in these texts. He is always trying to find a balance between following God's will and the fact that people are weak. Some Ethiopian texts talk about him fighting with other heavenly beings who want to share forbidden knowledge too soon. These fights are full of both tension and sadness. His role is solitary. Few can understand how much he has to carry. Some texts say that even other angels don't fully understand the moral problems he has to deal with. He has to keep a secret and act at just the right time, which means he is always on guard, weighing compassion against necessity. This fight makes him more human than most angels in the popular imagination, which makes him a person to be respected and understood. So, Gabriel's image in Ethiopia is much more dynamic than it is in Western culture. He is a paradox of divine mercy and strict protection. He must deliver messages of hope while also holding knowledge that could cause great harm if it is not handled properly. Every intervention, every whispered warning, and every hidden manuscript he oversees adds to the idea that history is not just recorded, it is also curated, protected, and sometimes limited for the greater good of the universe. His actions are well thought out, but they also come from a place of deep emotion. They combine the precision of a keeper with the pain of seeing humanity's flaws. In this picture, Gabriel is more than just a messenger. He is a guardian of the truth, a keeper of secrets, and an unwilling participant in the ongoing drama of creation and human destiny. The Ethiopian manuscripts describe a time and place that was both familiar and strange, long before the world as we know it existed. They talk about a time when creation was still changing and the cosmos had not yet fully settled into the order described in later texts. These texts present a narrative of existence that predates Adam, a theme seldom addressed in Western scripture. These hidden scrolls say that creation is not just one event, but a series of events that happen in different realms and dimensions. Light spills in broken patterns, and worlds appear and disappear in a cycle of emergence and entropy. In this space, Adam shows up, not as the man we usually think of, but as a glowing being, a light body atom, shining so brightly that it almost hurts to look at him, as if the sun itself had turned into a person. He wakes up to the sounds of creation, confused, weak, and shaking in front of a reality that is much bigger than he can understand. Gabriel is next to him, a presence that is both comforting and scary. The angel shows Adam how to get around in this broken universe, where there is a lot of power and potential but also a lot of danger. Adam is confused and amazed at first. He moves slowly, and each step lights up the shadows of lands that aren't fully formed. The mountains and rivers seem to know he's looking at them, and the air is full of energy. There is a sense of urgency, a real feeling that Adam's awakening is not just personal but cosmic, that his very existence has effects that go beyond what he can understand right now. Gabriel whispers warnings that are very serious, because even at this early stage, the seeds of conflict are being planted, and tensions between heavenly forces will later explode across human history. The manuscripts go into great detail about how Adam first saw things. He feels a duality, a world where light and shadow mix, a place where creation itself seems to breathe, respond, and even test him. He is amazed by its beauty, but he is also afraid of the hidden dangers that lie within. Every encounter is a lesson. Every glowing tree, every moving stone, and every river that seems to be alive with strange energies teaches us something and warns us. Gabriel is patient but firm as he guides Adam with steady hands and worried eyes. The angel warns, "Some knowledge can burn the soul if you don't prepare for it." These words have a weight that the Genesis account in the Western Bible doesn't have. Adam takes in these lessons with both fear and respect. He starts to understand that his life is not just about living in a world, but also about finding a balance between curiosity and caution, light and darkness, and creation and destruction. Even as Adam learns, pieces of cosmic conflict start to show up. The manuscripts suggest that there are forces that oppose order, beings, and energies that want to stop creation from happening. Gabriel protects Adam from the immediate danger, but he can't completely hide the truth. Shadows move in the distance, hinting at beings who will later be known as Nephilim or Fallen Watchers. Their presence is a reminder that the story of humanity is connected to forces that are beyond what mortals can see. Adam is both amazed and scared. His glowing form shows both innocence and hidden strength. The angel's advice is very clear and sometimes harsh. He teaches lessons about self-control, observation, and the risks of using knowledge too soon. Adam learns that creation is not just a background for what people do. It is an interactive, almost living framework in which every choice has effects that can be felt in other dimensions. The manuscripts talk about times when Adam tries to explore on his own because he is naturally curious. People are amazed and confused by each of his trips because different parts of the world react in unexpected ways to him. Gabriel watches closely and only steps in when he needs to. Each time he does, he teaches a lesson. Some truths must stay hidden, and some paths have not yet been walked. These moments are powerful because they show Adam not as a passive recipient of divine instruction, but as an active participant in shaping how he understands life. His early failures, mistakes, and the fear that comes with them bring him closer to Gabriel. Their relationship changes into one of mentorship, guidance, and deep cosmic responsibility. The manuscripts also talk about Adam's light body, which is a form that gives off energy and insight but also makes him weak. His brightness is both a blessing and a curse. It lets him see things that normal people can't, but it also draws the attention of people who want to use or destroy him. Gabriel teaches him how to channel this inner light and keep his mind from becoming too full. This delicate training not only focuses on the physical aspects of Adam's life, but also on the moral and spiritual aspects of who he is. Every lesson is based on the idea that the beginning of humanity was not meant to be easy. It was made in the tension between brilliance and danger, knowledge and caution. These Ethiopian texts stand out because they go into great detail about the warnings that Gabriel gives, which are not found in Western scripture. Adam is warned about the dangers of being too curious, trusting what he sees, and figuring out what people mean by what they say. He learns to respect creation not as property, but as a being with its own rules and hidden forces. There are stories of angels, watchers, and cosmic forces whose actions affect human fate in each lesson. The story conveys a sense of urgency and purpose, suggesting that even the earliest humans were part of a larger, carefully planned drama, and that Gabriel's guidance was important for keeping the balance between divine will and human understanding. Adam's experience is not unique. It exemplifies the perpetual conflict between knowledge and restraint, illumination and obscurity, disclosure and concealment. As he travels through the new world, he sees signs of what is to come, cracks that suggest future moral problems, beings whose motives are unclear, and hints of a universe where free will must be balanced with wisdom. Gabriel is always there, a link to safety and duty that reminds Adam that the beginning of humanity is also the beginning of its problems. The manuscripts make you feel both wonder and tension by showing a creation that is alive, reacts, and has consequences that are far beyond what the first human to live there could understand. Every moment in these early realms shows how vulnerable and important Adam is at the same time. He is both a child and a guardian, a light and a learner, shining brightly while also facing the very real dangers that come with being that way. Gabriel's guidance, which is mixed with caution and sadness, shapes him in ways that the Western Bible never shows. The angel does more than just tell Adam what God wants him to do or give him messages. He also teaches, protects, and sometimes holds him back, getting him ready for the challenges that the world, both seen and unseen, will bring. These manuscripts give us a glimpse of a creation story that is both amazing and scary, a beginning that is personal, cosmic, and full of effects that last forever. A group of angels made decisions that would change the course of both heaven and earth long before people fully understood what sin was. The Ethiopian manuscripts say that there were 200 angels, called the Watchers, who looked down on the new human world and let curiosity and desire win over obedience. These stories show the Watchers as beings of great power who can change civilizations and bend the natural order to their will. This is different from the sanitized versions that are common in Western texts. They weren't evil by nature. They were drawn to mortal life because of its raw emotions, freedoms, and possibilities. They crossed the line of the divine in their desire to be powerful and knowledgeable, coming down from the heavens to walk among humans and share knowledge and power that should never have been shared. The Ethiopian scrolls show Gabriel's strong reaction to their betrayal. He faces the rebels with sadness, authority, and a clear understanding of what their actions will lead to, not with violence right away. The manuscripts say that he stood in the middle of heaven's courts, his light dimmed by sadness, and begged the Watchers to change their minds and go back to being obedient. But the angels don't want to give in because they are drawn to the power of the world and the closeness to humans. Their rebellion makes a crack in heaven, separating loyalty from curiosity. Some angels stay true to their divine purpose, while others give in to temptation and get caught up in a web of earthly influence that will have effects that go far beyond the first act of defiance. The Ethiopian Enoch gives an unprecedented amount of detail about what the Watchers did and how they acted after they came down. The scrolls show angels teaching humans forbidden arts like metallurgy, sorcery, astrology, and warfare techniques. This is different from later, shorter versions of the story. These lessons are interesting to people, but they come with hidden costs. Knowledge that is meant to speed up understanding instead leads to corruption, confusion, and moral decay. Gabriel watches the consequences unfold with deep sadness, knowing that the gift of insight has turned into a weapon of chaos. He sees the first kingdoms rise on this unstable base, and the earth itself bends under the weight of ambition and desire that has been let loose too soon. The manuscripts say that these angels are powerful but not all-powerful. They are bound by law, duty, and consequence, but they choose to break the law anyway, which creates a tension between freedom and responsibility that will last throughout human history. The Ethiopian texts stress how this rebellion affects Gabriel personally. He feels a grief that goes beyond just disappointment as he faces each watcher. He sees the spread of forbidden desires, which corrupts not only humans but also the angels, who are torn between loyalty and temptation. He is even more sad because he knows that, while some of these beings will eventually face judgment, their influence is already built into the very fabric of human society. The manuscripts talk about times when Gabriel cries quietly in secret rooms, mourning a world that was ruined before it could fully bloom. But he keeps doing his job, acting as both an enforcer and a protector. In this, the angel is very humanized. His sadness, self-control, and sense of duty make him both strong and very understanding. The Watcher's fall is more than just a story of rebellion. It is a turning point in the universe. By deciding to share forbidden knowledge and build earthly kingdoms, they mix up the line between divine order and human experience. They teach people secrets that the divine kept from them, which makes them both curious and corrupt. The manuscripts talk about cities that were built under their guidance, as well as great buildings and temples dedicated to things that honor human ambition but break divine law. Instinct and obedience used to guide people, but now they are drawn to power, knowledge, and desire. Gabriel watches this fall apart with a mix of horror and determination, knowing that his job is to lessen the damage without interfering with free will itself. His actions are careful, precise, and very emotional, showing how hard it is to set limits without taking away hope. Conflict spreads across both worlds as the Watchers try to control human groups. The manuscripts describe fights not only between Gabriel and the rebels, but also within the angelic hierarchy, where loyalty and curiosity clash in dramatic ways. Angels who stay true to their faith have a hard time keeping the chaos in check, while those who are curious or even compassionate justify their actions as such. Gabriel's interactions with these groups show how complicated the story's moral landscape is. He isn't a distant enforcer, he's an active participant who thinks about each choice and the effects of rebellion. This tension between following the rules and breaking them, knowing and holding back, shapes the early story of human civilization in ways that are not present in simplified Western accounts. The Ethiopian accounts also show the Watchers' personal reasons for doing what they did, which makes their betrayal even more tragic. They are not drawn to the world out of pure malice. They are drawn to it because they want to understand what they can't fully understand. Their relationships with people are complicated, often paternal or fraternal, but not always right. This duality, noble intention twisted into corruption, adds depth to the story, making the Watchers tragic figures whose fall leads to both learning and destruction. Gabriel's response is influenced by this nuance. He does not merely punish but aims to correct, protect, and contain, recognizing that absolutes are infrequent and the repercussions of each action resonate for generations. The manuscripts say that the Watchers' teachings spread quickly, their kingdoms got bigger, and the earth became more and more morally and spiritually unbalanced. Gabriel sees the first signs of human ambition mixed with forbidden knowledge, the first acts of war, and the first signs of moral divergence that will later shape humanity's struggles. He deals with his grief by taking action. He starts to make lists, watch, and write down events, which will help future generations understand how bad these early wrongdoings were. The texts imply that this documentation is integral to Gabriel's enduring mission to safeguard knowledge, which can be perilous, from total obliteration, thereby preserving the legacy of rebellion for future generations to learn from without replicating past mistakes. The Ethiopian manuscripts turn the story of the Watchers from a simple story about fallen angels into a huge story with cosmic effects. Gabriel becomes an important character, not only delivering messages but also actively changing the moral and spiritual landscape by balancing justice with mercy and observation with action. The first kingdoms were built on both wonder and corruption, and the first people had desires and knowledge that would test them for the rest of their lives. The story makes you feel both awe and caution. It shows how the first acts of wrongdoing echo through history and how the angels, especially Gabriel, walk the fine line between protecting people and respecting their free will. The world had just begun to heal from the first tremors of forbidden knowledge when another darkness came, one that was more real, more terrifying, and impossible to ignore. The Nephilim, who were the children of the Watchers, took over the earth with power and violence that no one had ever seen before. They were huge, both in terms of their size and the meaning they held. They were a living reminder of the evil that had spread through the world because of the angels' rebellion. Ethiopian writings say that they were tyrants who walked among people, took over cities and lands, and used their strength to bend the weak and powerless. They were not just physically powerful, they were also morally, spiritually, and emotionally powerful, spreading fear, greed, and desire throughout society. People who were small and weak in comparison cried out in fear. These huge creatures took over villages, towns, and even new cities. Mothers cried as their children were taken away, families were torn apart, and once thriving communities were left in ruins. The manuscripts tell stories of fires that destroyed homes, crops that were trampled by huge feet, and an air that was thick with fear and despair. Every act of violence seemed to have effects that went beyond the physical ones, leaving emotional and spiritual scars that lasted for generations. These were not just stories or lies. They were records of a time when humanity was on the edge, watched over by angels who had to find a balance between helping and respecting everyone's free will, whether they were human or not. Gabriel's presence during this time is both important and sad. Gabriel, on the other hand, is still dedicated to protecting people while following God's laws. The Nephilim, on the other hand, are extensions of the angel's disobedience. Ethiopian texts stress his role as a teacher and a guide, warning good men like Noah about the growing corruption. He doesn't seem like a distant, quiet observer. Instead, he seems like an active participant, sending warnings, survival tips, and moral guidance to those whose hearts are still pure. His words are full of urgency and compassion, showing both the risks of ignoring the danger and the hope that could come if people make the right choices. The manuscripts indicate that Gabriel's interventions were essential in maintaining a trajectory of righteousness, safeguarding the continuity of knowledge, morality, and faith amidst profound chaos. The corruption of bloodlines was not only a genealogical issue, it was also a moral, spiritual, and cosmic issue. The Nephilim married humans, which spread not only their physical strength but also the sneaky, harmful effects of their father's rebellion. Ethiopian scrolls say that these mixed generations have amazing powers but also a moral gray area that is often sad. They could be smart, creative, or incredibly strong, but their hearts were full of the shadows of forbidden knowledge, the temptations and pride that angels had passed down to them when they had gone too far. People lived in fear and awe as they tried to make sense of a world where giants ruled and morality had been badly damaged. Gabriel's warnings to Noah and other good men stressed how important it was to keep purity, not just in blood but also in intention, action, and spiritual alignment. This time period is very emotional, and it shows. Women cried for their children who were taken from them. Men fought and died against beings whose strength was far greater than that of humans, and communities were left in ruins, both physically and emotionally. Fires destroyed homes, crops failed because of the damage, and the spiritual infection of greed, desire, and the desire to rule spread like a disease, affecting both people and angels. These texts make it clear that Gabriel is sad. They show him trying to find his way in a world that is on the edge of chaos and the remains of order. He moves carefully, knowing that any action must be exact. If he makes a mistake, it could make corruption worse instead of stopping it. But he doesn't give up because the stakes are so high. The survival of morality, human choice, and a line that could one day bring balance back to the world depends on his watchfulness and guidance. The manuscripts show that Ethiopia is very important for keeping this history alive. The scrolls kept in monasteries, hidden in mountains, and protected by years of fasting and devotion still remember these events. They document the Nephilim's atrocities, Gabriel's admonitions, and the decisions of individuals attempting to either resist or yield to corruption. Ethiopian texts give a detailed, emotionally charged account of the effects of rebellion, which is different from Western accounts that often leave out or simplify these details. They show how strong people can be when faced with overwhelming power and how hard it is for people to choose between doing the right thing and staying alive. Every story and warning has both historical and spiritual meaning, so that people in the future can learn from the mistakes and successes of the past. The manuscripts also show times of quiet bravery. Not all people gave in to despair. Some fought back with divine insight, bravery, or sheer willpower. Gabriel's help was often quiet, like giving instructions in dreams, signs in nature, or strategic advice through other people. He instilled faith in the hearts of the virtuous, establishing a refuge of hope amidst the encroaching chaos of the external world. These glimpses of resilience show that even though the giants were very powerful, moral strength and spiritual alignment were still very strong. The fight was not only physical, it was also moral. It was a fight to protect human dignity and divine order from the corrupting influence of bloodlines. The Ethiopian texts say that the age of the giants is a turning point when the conflict between divine law and human freedom, angelic guidance and rebellious ambition reaches an incredible level. This story is mostly about Gabriel's role as a protector, observer, and guide. This shows how complicated his mission is on an emotional and moral level. He is not far away or perfect. He sees suffering, steps in with care, and gets people ready for a future where choice, faith, and awareness will decide who lives and who dies. The manuscripts depict a perilous world replete with moral intricacies and cosmic importance, inhabited by giants, where the repercussions of insurrection extend far beyond the immediate, leaving enduring scars. This time period shows clearly how divine oversight, angelic rebellion, and human resilience all work together. It shows both the horror and the deep lessons of the Nephilim era. Before the flood changed the world, there were civilizations on Earth that later generations can't even imagine. Ethiopian stories tell of great African cities that were full of wealth and creativity. The streets looked like they were covered in gold dust, and the towers reached up to the sky, with strange lights on top that pulsed with otherworldly energy. These cities were more than just places to do business. They were places to learn, places to see art, and places to ask spiritual questions, where the line between human understanding and divine insight was thin. The manuscripts talk about technologies and devices that seemed almost magical, strange tools that could capture light, store sound, and communicate over long distances. These were things that scholars hundreds of years later could barely understand. These civilizations were lively and advanced, but they also had the seeds of their own downfall. They were stuck between ambition and divine law, curiosity and restraint. The Ethiopian manuscripts tell a story of brilliance and destruction, guidance and loss, hope and inevitability through these vivid accounts. Gabriel moves through these civilizations with sadness and determination, trying to save what he can while still following the rules set by God. His presence, subtly woven into the fabric of these ancient cities, connects the human and the divine, showing us what could have been and teaching us what could still happen. The manuscripts show not only what happened, but also how people felt, the moral complexity of the situation, and the cosmic significance of it all. They create a tapestry that shows how fragile, strong, and full of potential humanity was before the floodwaters changed the world. There is a reality beyond the mortal world that few people have ever seen. It is a structure of existence that is layered in ways that are hard to imagine. Ethiopian manuscripts talk about the seven heavens, which are 7 different realms with different purposes, looks, and spiritual meanings. Gabriel, the unchanging guide, moves through these worlds with a knowledge and power that makes people feel both awe and humility. He takes prophets, chosen mortals whose hearts can hold pieces of divine truth, through layers that shine with fire, crystal, and sound. These aren't just things we see or hear. They are manifestations of the laws of divine order, cosmic balance, and moral alignment that are woven into the very fabric of existence. The prophets go through these places and see and feel things that are too much for humans to understand. Their senses are overwhelmed, and their spirits shake under the weight of revelation. The Ethiopian texts say that the first heaven is a place of light where fire dances without burning anything, showing truth in a way that is both pure and demanding. Gabriel carefully leads the prophets, teaching them in small ways and showing them how each flame stands for a different principle of mercy, justice, or obedience. The people who come to see them shake and their hearts race as they try to understand what they see and feel. They cry not just because they are scared, but also because they are moved beyond words by the beauty and terror of what they understand. They are overwhelmed and humbled, but they have to keep going because they know that if they turn back now, they won't fully understand and their hearts won't be ready for what's next. The realms change as they move up to the second and third heavens. Crystalline structures are the most important ones because they bend light and sound into patterns that send layers of information through vibration and reflection. Gabriel lets the prophets feel the resonance of these structures, warning them that they can't carry the knowledge contained here if their hearts aren't ready. Every step and sound has a meaning. The patterns teach us about morality, divine law, and the delicate balance between freedom and responsibility. The prophets cry, shiver, and falter, but Gabriel is always there, silently assuring them that what they see is important, even if they don't understand it right away. The manuscripts make it clear that this is not an easy journey. It is a rite of passage in which the human spirit is tested, stretched, and sometimes broken so that it can be rebuilt stronger and wiser. Sound turns into a language all its own in the fourth heaven. Every vibration connects with a different part of existence. Some show the results of disobedience, others show the benefits of being faithful, and still others show the fragile links that connect angels, humans, and the universe. The prophets have to listen, feel, and take in information that can't just be memorized or recited. Gabriel walks next to them, and his presence gives them strength. His guidance is clear but not obvious. He uses gestures and looks to explain, a quiet language that helps the prophets understand the rules that govern the chaotic symphony of sound. The Ethiopian manuscripts stress that these lessons are deep and risky. If you aren't ready for them, they can break your mind or completely overwhelm your soul. Gabriel is in charge of making sure that the knowledge gets to the right people and only in small amounts. The fifth and sixth heavens are places where light, gravity, and even time can bend and shift. The prophets face both emotional and physical challenges as the principles of divine law become real in the world. For example, rivers of bright energy flow against invisible currents, crystal stairways twist upward in impossible shapes, and areas of weightless flight require both courage and faith. Gabriel teaches them how to deal with these forces by saying that being obedient, humble, and morally clear lets a person move safely while also understanding the deeper meaning of each movement. The manuscripts show these events in great detail, like a movie, the prophets holding each other's hands for support, crying, whispering prayers, and still moving forward, driven by a mix of fear, awe, and the undeniable pull of truth. These places aren't meant for casual visits. They're tests, trials, and revelations all at once. In the seventh heaven, which is the highest level of cosmic knowledge, the prophets come face to face with the very essence of divine order. The manuscripts here say that time, space, and morality all come together to form one reality that cannot be put into words. Gabriel lets the prophets see the harmony that connects everything, the rules that angels and humans must follow, and what happens when someone breaks these rules. It is a flood of insight and understanding that can break those who are not ready for it. People cry, gasp, and have moments of collapse all the time. Gabriel's guidance becomes both literal and emotional support, a lifeline for the human soul that is facing truths it was never meant to face alone. Ethiopian texts make it clear that this is the area of ultimate responsibility, where knowledge is both a gift and a burden, and where you need to be brave, humble, and loyal. Gabriel's job during these times was very important, but it was also very sad. He traveled through these cities in secret, moving quietly among kings, priests, and scholars, whispering advice to those who were willing to listen. He saw rulers who were proud of their power, inventors who were on the edge of moral danger, and families who were doing well in ways that often reflected the divine order. In some cities, he met leaders who knew their own ambition was dangerous and tried to control it. In other cities, he met leaders whose desires had already gone too far into the dangerous areas of greed, pride, and too much knowledge. The manuscripts show Gabriel as both an observer and an advisor, someone who protects potential but is painfully aware of the limits set by divine law. He could lead, warn, and teach, but he couldn't go against the basic idea of free will, which would ultimately determine the fate of these civilizations. The Ethiopian scrolls focus on how much emotional weight Gabriel had. Each city he went to was like a tiny world, with a fragile ecosystem of human creativity, morality, and curiosity. As he walked through palaces that sparkled with gold and silver and busy markets full of trade, he saw the potential for civilizations that could have changed the course of history by passing down knowledge and spiritual insight from one generation to the next. But he also saw the slow corruption that was starting to happen, the first signs of moral decay, the way people's goals were not in line with God's law, and the inevitable results of too much knowledge and pride. Gabriel worked hard to warn, guide, and sometimes subtly correct people in the shadows of grand temples and under the hum of lit halls. He knew that his actions had to be exact, measured, and limited so that they didn't interfere with the divine plan itself. One of the most interesting things about these legends is how they show the relationship between what is seen and what is not. Gabriel went to many cities that had heavenly devices, which were tools and buildings that were beyond the understanding of normal people. Some were made to record celestial events, some were made to map the stars and connect human life with cosmic rhythms, and some were made to hold manuscripts with knowledge that would later be lost. The Ethiopian manuscripts imply that Gabriel was involved in protecting the most dangerous of these devices, making sure that any knowledge that could lead people astray was either hidden or destroyed. In this role, he is both a guardian and a middleman. He has to protect knowledge while also stopping corruption, which is a heavy burden for him because he sees the potential and danger in these civilizations at the same time. The manuscripts also talk about the times Gabriel met with kings who were open to his advice. These leaders were taught how to be humble, how to be moral, and how to take care of knowledge. Some listened to his advice and changed their policies. They also taught their people how important it is to be careful and make moral choices. Others fought back because they were proud, wanted to be in charge, or were afraid of losing power. The Ethiopian texts tell vivid stories of conversations that took place in candlelit rooms, on marble terraces, or under the open sky, where the angel's presence was both awe-inspiring and subtle. Gabriel's efforts to bring these civilizations together show that he understands human nature and how easily moral balance can be lost. This shows that he is not only an enforcer of divine law, but also a caring guide trying to protect the best of humanity before disaster struck. The manuscripts show that most civilizations were going to fall, no matter what he did. The texts say that the reasons were not random. God let these civilizations fall apart because their pride, ambition, and lack of respect for divine boundaries had gotten so bad that they would have spread corruption even more if they had lived. Gabriel's sadness is clear in the stories, as he sees knowledge lost, cities destroyed, and human potential wasted. But even in the middle of destruction, the angel tries to save what is left of these civilizations. People hide manuscripts, artifacts, and secrets that are thought to be too dangerous to leave in the hands of mortals. They are often taken to faraway places, hidden under mountains, or sealed inside sacred Ethiopian sites. These hidden archives, which generations of monks and guardians have preserved with love and care, connect the lost civilizations to people who want to learn more in the future. The scrolls talk a lot about how this time affected people's feelings. Families are shown grieving the inevitable fall of their cities, scholars are sad about the loss of knowledge, and communities are having a hard time keeping faith in the face of destruction. Gabriel's presence is a subtle anchor that reminds us that God is always watching over us, even when we feel alone. His interventions are thoughtful, measured, and full of compassion. This shows that he has two duties: to uphold divine law and to protect human life and potential. By doing these things, he protects bits of truth and knowledge so that the lessons of these civilizations, both their successes and their failures, aren't completely lost to time. These texts show that Ethiopia is the last safe place where the echoes of these old civilizations can be heard. There are manuscripts in its monasteries, mountains, and caves that talk about the cities, the kings, the inventions, and the moral lessons that Gabriel tried to teach. The scrolls, which were protected by fasting, prayer, and devotion, are a storehouse of knowledge that has survived the flood and the fall of early civilizations. They show that the angel's mission is still going strong. to protect knowledge, record history, and lead people even when things are going wrong in the world. Ethiopia is unique because it is the last place in the world where things that people thought were lost forever are still kept safe. The focus of this journey is on Gabriel's humanity, which is often forgotten. Even though he is an angel, he feels sad, tired, and very worried about the people he is taking care of. His job is not easy. He has to protect the prophets, share knowledge in a controlled way, and keep divine law while doing all of this. There are times in the manuscripts when Gabriel stops to comfort a trembling prophet or whisper words of comfort, reminding them that even in the midst of cosmic chaos, there is still hope and guidance. His presence makes the heavenly journey more human, letting people who watch the story connect emotionally, feel the weight of revelation, and see the fragile courage it takes to bear such knowledge. The journey through the seven heavens is not just a physical or spiritual ascent, it is also a moral, emotional, and intellectual preparation. The prophets are tested differently in each realm, but the message that knowledge can lead to destruction when it is misused or not tempered is always the same. Gabriel's careful guidance shows how to strike a balance between telling the truth and keeping people safe, between showing the cosmic order and letting people live with it. The prophets come out of fire, crystal, and sound, as well as awe and terror, tears and trembling. They are forever changed and carry pieces of wisdom that can help people, but only if they are treated with respect, humility, and understanding. The Ethiopian manuscripts, with their vivid detail, show that these seven heavens are not just ideas but real things that can be experienced. They document not only the geography of the celestial realms but also the emotional, moral, and spiritual significance of encountering divine truth. Gabriel's path through these unseen layers serves as both a tangible guide for the prophets and a metaphor for the human spirit's journey in confronting the enormity of cosmic law, ethical duty, and spiritual enlightenment. The manuscripts say that these truths can't be held by hearts that aren't ready, but they also inspire awe, respect, and hope. They show the fragile balance between danger and enlightenment, fear and understanding, despair and faith. Long before the world was broken by water or the fall of cities, another important moment was coming that would change the course of human history for thousands of years. The Ethiopian manuscripts tell a version of the Tower of Babel story that is very different from the one we know in the West. It shows hidden motives, God's plan, and Gabriel's tireless work to help a people who are about to fall into pride and ambition. Nimrod, the powerful hunter and king, is not just a builder of monuments. He is also a ruler who wants to control everything and build a global empire that will erase all past warnings, hide knowledge, and put all of humanity under one rule. His plans were as big as they were risky. They included not only land but also the hearts and minds of people. He wanted to consolidate power in a way that could have upset the delicate balance of morality and truth that angels and good people alike had worked so hard to keep. Gabriel, who had always been there during times of trouble in the past, confronted Nimrod and his advisors with sadness and urgency. Ethiopian texts say that he showed up in visions and dreams, in whispers carried by the wind, and sometimes even in person among the people, but most people couldn't see him. His warnings were clear: the creation of a single large empire, without humility or divine guidance, would not only fail, but it would also corrupt, erase, and enslave the moral and spiritual fabric of humanity. The angel's words were important, but they also had a sense of inevitability because people who have free will often couldn't help but be proud. Gabriel tried to make people more careful by reminding them of lost civilizations, lost knowledge, and the terrible things that can happen when ambition goes unchecked. But Nimrod's vision, which was fueled by pride and determination, kept going, and the seeds of conflict between divine law and human desire were planted. The manuscripts describe Gabriel's sadness as he watched the gathering of materials, the digging of foundations, and the unending drive of people inspired or forced by Nimrod's ambition. He saw the same patterns that had caused ancient civilizations to fall before the flood. People getting too excited about big projects and forgetting about moral issues, and moral decay creeping into the lives of people who should have been protecting knowledge and justice. The angels' actions became more subtle, focusing on hearts instead of hands. They pushed wise people to speak, inspired leaders to question, and woke up prophets who would later pass on pieces of these lessons. Gabriel knew that destroying things wasn't always the best option. Sometimes, changing how you look at things or breaking down communication could keep the larger arc of divine order intact while keeping people from completely losing their morals. This is where the Ethiopian manuscripts differ most from the Western story. Instead of being a punishment, the splitting of languages is seen as an act of mercy. Gabriel predicted that if people came together under Nimrod's one language and vision, they might forget important truths, the lessons of civilizations that had fallen, and make a society that couldn't tell right from wrong. The division of language, which was confusing and disorganized, gave people time to think, allowed for cultural and moral diversity, and helped knowledge survive outside of one empire's control. In essence, it was a lifeline, a way to keep the possibility of moral and spiritual growth alive for future generations, and a way to keep ambition from getting out of hand and causing moral chaos. People weren't being punished out of anger, they were being protected from their own ability to do harm. The manuscripts give a clear picture of how people reacted during this time. Families had a hard time talking to each other because of new language barriers, trade and alliances fell apart, and communities had to quickly learn how to survive. But even in the midst of all the chaos, the seeds of wisdom that Gabriel and other guiding angels planted took root. People who remembered the warnings and understood the subtle lessons hidden in bits of conversation and culture became the keepers of moral reasoning, spiritual insight, and ethical knowledge. Gabriel was still sad, but there was also hope. The angel knew that even when things seemed to be falling apart, people's strength, curiosity, and faith could keep the important truths that civilization needs to keep going. The Ethiopian texts that carefully record Nimrod's motives show that there was more going on than just a desire for architectural glory. He wanted to be able to control memory and narrative, to be able to define history and morality in his own way. Gabriel knew what could happen and carefully planned how to deal with this threat. The angels' actions were planned so that they wouldn't have to face brute force head-on, but instead would change the outcome in a way that would stop corruption from happening. The manuscripts show this tension in great detail. Nimrod's advisors arguing about the angels' advice, builders stopping in confusion as divine influence changes their point of view, and prophets whispering guidance to each other as they remember this event. Gabriel's approach shows how hard it is to find the right balance between justice, mercy, and foresight. This shows how complicated divine oversight is in a world where people make their own choices. The Ethiopian manuscripts also teach us a lesson that will never go away. People keep making the same mistakes that Babel did. Throughout history, centralization of power, suppression of knowledge, and disregard for moral and ethical principles have been common themes. Gabriel's warnings, which are still in these old scrolls, are not just old things. They are mirrors that show the patterns of ambition, pride, and moral compromise that keep coming back. The angel's role is both historical and ongoing in moral relevance. To highlight the consequences of unchecked ambition, to encourage reflection, and to preserve the possibility of learning and ethical growth even when human actions seem predetermined by desire and pride. These texts show that Gabriel is more than just a messenger of God's anger or reward. He is also a protector, a guide, and a mediator who works to protect humanity's potential while respecting its freedom. People of all ages have heard his warnings over and over, each time stressing the fragile balance between power, knowledge, and responsibility. The Ethiopian version of Babel shows a world on the verge of change, where the conflict between human ambition and divine order cannot be resolved through punishment alone. Instead, it requires careful, strategic intervention that maintains the potential for survival, learning, and moral resilience. It is a story of warning, sadness, and hope that is told in a way that is both cosmic and very human, and that resonates across time and culture. The Ethiopian manuscripts show that the knowledge of the sacred went beyond words and rituals. It included technology that was beyond what most people could understand, as well as instruments that were made with divine guidance, not just by humans. The Ark of the Covenant stands out as the most remarkable, a powerful device that connects heaven and earth and holds knowledge that could either shed light on or destroy. Ethiopian texts don't just call it a container for tablets. They also call it a heavenly device that interacts with divine energy and can make light, sound, and even movement that human science can barely understand. Gabriel, always watchful and accurate, was the teacher and protector of this knowledge. He only showed its structure and purpose to those whose hearts and minds could handle the weight of understanding. In these manuscripts, Gabriel appears to chosen men in private rooms, often lit by candlelight or the otherworldly glow of holy fires, and teaches them the principles behind the ark and other heavenly tools. Pillars of fire are said to be both protective and communicative, responding to alignment with divine law and echoing the resonance of the cosmos. Gabriel shows that these flames are not just things that happen. They are living parts of spiritual order that connect the living and the dead. The selected students are terrified because of the weight of the responsibility and the size of what they are learning. They see how light and energy interact, learn how to measure the invisible currents of power, and understand, even if only partially, the meaning of things that are both physical and metaphysical. Portals and gates are common themes in these texts. They are described as doorways that let people into places or knowledge that are usually closed to them. Gabriel instructs the chosen disciples to discern these aspects and to navigate their functions without transgressing the fragile line between human curiosity and divine confidentiality. In addition to energy and structure, each portal is protected by law, moral alignment, and intention. This supports the idea that you need to be spiritually and morally ready to use divine technology. The Ethiopian manuscripts stress that these lessons were never meant to be shared widely. Knowledge in the wrong hands could cause destruction instead of enlightenment. Gabriel's advice is strict but patient, making sure that those who learn can handle the truth without giving in to fear, pride, or misuse. The manuscripts indicate that Western institutions and authorities have suppressed or altered this knowledge over the years because they thought it was too dangerous for everyone to know. People hid, rewrote, or even destroyed codices, rituals, and instructions. Instead, Ethiopian scholars kept them safe, knowing that humanity's survival and moral growth depended on careful stewardship of sacred knowledge. These texts show a hidden tension, fear and respect mixed with curiosity and the desire for power. Divine technology made people feel both awe and fear, even when they were faithful. The ark, the portals, and the instruments were not toys or weapons. They were living machines that followed rules that people couldn't understand and could do a lot of good or cause a lot of trouble. The manuscripts show that people reacted right away and with a lot of emotion. The chosen men feel both awe and fear as they watch the ark light up, see flames react to their intentions, and feel the hum of a portal as it moves slightly in recognition. Some people fall to their knees because they can't believe what they see, which makes them feel like they're seeing things that aren't real. Some people have a hard time understanding the rules and putting celestial mechanics into terms that people can understand. Gabriel's presence anchors them, but he can't take away the weight of realization. Understanding sacred technology means taking responsibility for its use, dealing with fear and temptation, and recognizing the fragile balance that lets people safely use divine tools. Ethiopian manuscripts talk about some rituals that are both useful and symbolic. They teach the chosen men how alignment, purity, and intention affect how sacred technology works. Every action, gesture, and word counts. You can't just use force or intelligence to turn on the ark. You need faith, discipline, and moral clarity as well. Gabriel insists on this integration, gently but firmly correcting mistakes, and sometimes showing results with visual or auditory feedback that shocks even the most loyal followers. Fire may dance in strange ways, and gates may move in strange ways. The students need to learn to respond with calmness, respect, and understanding instead of panic or impatience. The manuscripts also describe conversations in which the chosen men ask questions out of fear and curiosity. Is this device dangerous to us? Could it show us things we shouldn't know? Gabriel answers clearly, saying that sacred technology is both a mirror and a magnifier. It shows the intentions of those who come into contact with it and makes them stronger on both the physical and spiritual levels. Misuse, ignorance, or arrogance could lead to consequences that no human observer could comprehend. Gabriel teaches his students deep humility through these lessons. He shows them that knowledge and power are always linked to moral duty and respectful fear. The manuscripts stress the practical lessons, but they also show moments of awe and wonder that are very human. The selected individuals, observing occurrences that blend the mystical with the mechanical and the sacred with the material, exhibit a spectrum of emotions from exhilaration to terror. They see the divine in action, feel a reality that is much bigger than themselves, and, for a brief moment, understand how big the responsibility of protecting humanity is. Gabriel's job is not just technical. He also has to guide people's hearts and minds, temper their excitement with caution, and give them a sense of moral purpose along with operational knowledge. These texts show a common theme of balance. Knowledge should be shared, but only when the person is ready. Curiosity is normal, but discipline is necessary. Divine power is a gift, but it requires accountability. Gabriel's interactions with chosen men show that he uses a multi-layered teaching style that includes demonstration, instruction, moral reinforcement, and emotional support. The manuscripts demonstrate that sacred technology is dynamic, imbued with energy, intention, and impact. It takes courage, honesty, and humility to understand it. People who succeed are changed forever because they learn not only technical skills but also how the world works, how to balance law and freedom, and how to be in awe of and responsible for things. The Ethiopian manuscripts show a lineage that has the weight of destiny, divine guidance, and the protection of sacred knowledge. This is the story of the Black Covenant, a bloodline that angels have touched, guided through the years, and mixed with prophecy and spiritual strength. The story of Sheba and Solomon is at the heart of this family tree. It is told in ways that are much more emotional and detailed than the usual versions. The Ethiopian texts portray Sheba not merely as a queen visiting a distant king, but as an independent sovereign, wise and discerning, bearing the spiritual obligations of her people. The meeting between her and Solomon is shown as a meeting of minds and spirits, where divine knowledge flows between them and changes not only nations but also destinies. Gabriel's subtle hand can be seen in these events, guiding their choices and making sure that the lineage that came from them would carry on the ark, knowledge, and holy purpose. Menelik I, the child born from this union, becomes an important person in Ethiopian history and spirituality. The manuscripts say that he went to Israel, met Solomon, and came back to Ethiopia not just as a prince, but also as a guardian of divine truth and the ark itself. Gabriel is with the boy on this journey, an invisible guide who keeps him safe as he carries both the physical and spiritual treasures that will define his people for centuries. The texts stress how heavy the burden is on Menelik's shoulders. He is not just moving a holy object, he is also keeping a promise, a link between heaven and humanity, and a lineage that would become very important to Ethiopian identity. Every step of his journey is full of respect, fear, and awe. You can feel the weight of walking in a destiny that is bigger than you in every passage. The manuscripts show that this lineage, led by Gabriel, didn't just survive, it thrived, gaining wisdom, justice, and spiritual strength over the years. Every generation is shown as a protector of the covenant, with both knowledge and duty. The ark is still important, not as a relic, but as a living symbol of a connection to the divine, a source of guidance, and a way to tell if someone is spiritually ready. Gabriel's job is never done. He teaches, warns, and protects, making sure that the bloodline stays true to its purpose even as the world changes around it. The manuscripts are full of stories about kings, scholars, and priests who protect the sacred knowledge while dealing with political and social problems, all thanks to Gabriel's unseen guidance. This keeps the covenant strong even when there are outside pressures or doubts. This lineage contains a prophecy that echoes through time, the promise of a southern kingdom of light, a country that stands for wisdom, spiritual insight, and moral authority. The Ethiopian manuscripts depict this kingdom not merely in geographical terms, but as a moral and spiritual entity, a symbol of hope and resilience in a world frequently tainted by oppression and corruption. Gabriel is also very important here. He is shown whispering advice, giving leaders vision, and making sure that the spiritual meaning of the covenant is not lost even when political or military pressures threaten to overshadow it. The prophecy is not vague. It is closely tied to the bloodline, the land, and the people. It shows a future where spiritual and moral guidance can flourish even when things are hard. The manuscripts also look into how deep this covenant is on an emotional level. Pride is there, but it is tempered by humility. Power is there, but it is balanced by responsibility. Gabriel's interventions show how humans and gods interact with each other. They show that lineage is not only biological but also spiritual, shaped by choices, faith, and moral guidance. The texts talk about times of doubt, fear, and sadness in the bloodline, but each generation shows strength, bravery, and obedience to God's word. Gabriel's guidance is subtle but always there, making sure that the lineage keeps growing and stays true to its sacred purpose. These stories have a deep emotional impact because they show human characters who are very relatable and who deal with fear, hope, duty, and the awe of being with the divine. This covenant has lessons that are still relevant today. The Ethiopian manuscripts stress that the story of Menelik and his descendants is more than just a historical account. It is a symbol of African spiritual strength, wisdom, and independence that will last forever. The lineage shows that identity, morality, and spiritual purpose can survive even when people are conquered, exiled, or their culture is suppressed. The texts are clear. Your story did not begin in bondage. The Black Covenant is a continuation of divine guidance, human courage, and spiritual integrity that has lasted through wars, colonization, and religious exclusion. It is both an affirmation and a call to recognize the value of one's heritage, the power of moral responsibility, and the presence of guidance, often unseen, that can sustain a people through centuries. Ethiopian manuscripts talk about ceremonies, rituals, and teachings that have been passed down through this family line, stressing how important they are for keeping the covenant. These include reading holy books, thinking about divine principles, and following moral codes that are in line with what Gabriel says. The Ark is the most important part because it connects us to the past, reminds us of the covenant, and teaches us how to be moral and spiritual. Even when things are uncertain or dangerous, the lineage still knows what its sacred duties are. This shows how important it is to have long-term divine guidance and to be disciplined in both moral and spiritual matters. The manuscripts end their story of the Black Covenant with a feeling of continuity and duty. Gabriel's guidance is always there, even if you can't see it. It is behind every choice, every act of preservation, and every passing on of knowledge. The covenant is both a real event in history and a living spiritual principle. It reminds the people of Ethiopia and everyone else who knows the story that moral responsibility and divine guidance go hand in hand. It is a lineage not only of blood but also of faith, bravery, and the unwavering dedication to safeguard, maintain, and convey sacred knowledge for the benefit of humanity through the ages. The Ethiopian manuscripts talk about a last scroll that is so powerful and well hidden that even the smartest priests are afraid to touch it. The last scroll contains prophecies not only about nations and kings, but also about the end of days. It shows humanity on the brink of chaos, with Gabriel, the eternal messenger, guiding and watching over them. This scroll, which is part of the Ethiopian Apocalypse of Peter, talks about the signs, lies, and cosmic tremors that will happen before an age unlike any other. Gabriel comes to the prophets as both a comforter and a warning, showing them glimpses of a world coming apart, a tapestry of events that reflects both the distant past and the uncertain present. His presence in these texts reminds us that God is always watching over us. Even as humanity falls into moral decay, an unseen hand tries to guide, protect, and record. The scrolls show deception as a tidal force that moves through hearts and nations. Leaders are swayed by ambition, false visions, and bad advice, while regular people have a hard time telling what's real and what's not. Gabriel's warnings ring out through the text, urgent but measured, showing how free will and divine law interact with each other. He tells the prophets that fallen angels are coming back, beings that were once cast out but are now trying to gain power over the mortal world. These angels, who are no longer far away, are said to be very close to people's wants and needs, causing confusion, ambition, and fear. People are caught between faith and temptation, and they face problems that are similar to the ones described in earlier Ethiopian texts, such as the corruption of bloodlines, the rise of tyrants, and the perversion of sacred knowledge. The scrolls show nations shaking, their foundations shaking under the weight of moral and spiritual decline. Cities built on greed and pride fall apart, and governments have a hard time keeping things in order as corruption spreads quickly. Gabriel tells the prophets to see these changes not from a distance, but from the close-up view of human suffering, the pain of people who are torn between loyalty, fear, and instinct. There are cosmic signs that go along with these events. For example, stars move in strange patterns, fires burn in strange shapes, and the skies seem to react to the moral chaos that is happening. The Ethiopian texts say that these signs are not just for show. They are signs of moral and spiritual states that show how well or poorly people are following God's law. One of the most frightening things is how these prophetic visions are similar to the days of Noah. Gabriel's messages are very clear. The world can fall again, just like it did before, when it was full of corruption, violence, and defiance. Floods, famine, and human suffering are not just things that happen in nature. They are also the results of moral decay. The scrolls talk about people who saw these disasters and had their hearts torn between hope and despair. They were trying to do the right thing even though everyone else was breaking the law. Gabriel's advice stresses being alert, making good decisions, and following the right path. This implies that the future may not be set in stone. Choices still matter, and moral courage can change things. Ethiopian manuscripts describe how Gabriel talks to people through symbolic visions and direct speech, which often makes it hard to tell the difference between dreams and waking life. Prophets talk about seeing nations fall apart because of lies, and celestial events show how important and urgent the messages are. Mountains explode, rivers flood, and skies get darker in ways that are both scary and helpful. Each vision has many meanings, showing both short-term threats and long-term effects. The scrolls say that how people respond is just as important as what happens. A world that ignores warnings, protects lies, or allows corruption invites not only physical but also spiritual upheaval. Gabriel's prophecies also talk about how communities are becoming less moral and more corrupt. Leaders who once stood for justice give in to greed and vanity. Spiritual leaders who are supposed to protect moral and religious law are now compromised. People who are not special are said to have a hard time telling the difference between right and wrong, faith and superstition, and real guidance and manipulation. The Ethiopian texts stress this tension by showing people as being stuck in a complicated moral landscape, neither completely innocent nor completely lost. Gabriel's instructions are clear but also complex. They give both a warning and a plan for staying honest in the face of uncertainty, a way to get through the chaos without giving up or losing hope. The last scroll focuses on how it feels to see events that happen at the end of time. People are said to be paralyzed by fear and overwhelmed by how big the change is, but they are also hopeful that discernment and courage can keep everything from falling apart. Families, communities, and nations are depicted in a state of dynamic tension, characterized by the conflict between individual survival and collective responsibility, as well as the struggle between succumbing to temptation and adhering to moral law. Gabriel is always there, guiding the prophets and reminding them that even in the middle of a storm, they can still be clear about what is right and do what is right. The scroll's main story is about the struggle between destruction and redemption, despair and hope. These prophecies show Gabriel's human side in a subtle way. He is divine, but he is sad about human mistakes, sad for those who are tricked, and worried about the moral stakes of the story that is unfolding. He talks to people with empathy because he knows what drives their choices, like their fears, struggles, and desires. The Ethiopian manuscripts bring these moments to life, making readers or listeners feel the weight of divine responsibility and human weakness. Gabriel's warnings are not vague. They are closely related to the real-life experiences of people, the decisions they make, and the effects of those decisions over time and space. By the end of the scroll, the tension is unbearable, a peak of cosmic, moral, and human urgency. Gabriel's visions come together, showing that terrible things are about to happen and at the same time giving a hint of hope. The manuscripts say that these prophecies are not just for fun or as a metaphor. They are real warnings that are meant to make people think, act, and be morally alert. People are at a crossroads, and the burden of choice, judgment, and bravery is very real. Gabriel is always there to guide the way through the darkness, with awe and fear mixed in. The Ethiopian texts create a landscape where the past, present, and future all meet. The last scrolls, which were sealed in dark Ethiopian monasteries, have a message that goes beyond time, culture, and language. Gabriel's revelations, which have been kept secret from most people, answer some of the most important questions about life: why we have to fight, why knowledge is sometimes kept from us, and how the divine tries to guide us even when things seem out of control. These old books remind us that the story of humanity is not just about survival, power, or conquest, but also about making choices, taking responsibility, and keeping the truth alive. The scroll's secrets reveal the patterns of our shared past, such as the rise and fall of civilizations, the corruption of bloodlines, the betrayal of angels, and the floods of moral and physical upheaval. They show us that humanity has always been at a crossroads, having to choose between wisdom and folly, obedience and rebellion, light and darkness. As these texts show, Gabriel is not just a messenger, he is also a keeper of both warning and hope. He moves through the pages with sadness and urgency, telling truths that can change hearts, societies, and even whole cultures if people listen. The Ethiopian manuscripts show that the knowledge was hidden not to punish people, but to keep them safe, to keep dangerous truths from being used for bad things, and to give people a chance to grow morally, spiritually, and ethically. Every lesson, from the beginning of time to the prophetic visions of the end times, has the same message. Understanding must be tempered with respect, bravery, and judgment. Knowledge alone is not enough. It must be taken on with care, knowing that actions have effects that last for generations. The scrolls show how fragile human nature is by showing how easily curiosity can turn into pride, ambition into oppression, and desire into chaos. They show us that even angels can make mistakes when curiosity gets in the way of obedience, and that even people can be corrupted when they don't have moral and spiritual guidance. But there is also hope in this warning, the chance for redemption, renewal, and restoration. Gabriel's guidance is not meant to punish, but to protect. It is a reminder that knowing how history works can help us avoid making the same mistakes again. The scrolls say that people can have great moral courage and can learn, change, and accept the truth even when things are confusing and dishonest. Many of the problems that Gabriel saw coming are happening now in our fast-changing, morally ambiguous, and culturally unstable world. The manuscripts talk about countries that are shaking because of greed and corruption, societies that are blinded by ambition, and hearts that are hard against divine guidance. But they also remind us that being aware, being careful, and being spiritually aligned can protect us from harm. The ancient Ethiopian texts, which have been carefully kept for hundreds of years, are more than just history. They are a guide for dealing with the confusion of today, giving both warnings against making bad decisions and the wisdom to look for balance, honesty, and moral clarity. They make us think about how we run things, how we teach, and how we treat each other in a world where power, knowledge, and influence can be abused so easily. The scrolls have a strong emotional impact. People are scared, amazed, and in awe of them as they deal with visions of cosmic war, the return of fallen angels, and the bad things that will happen because of moral decay. Gabriel's presence as both an observer and a guide reminds us that God has always been there to help us make decisions. The Ethiopian manuscripts show times of great emotional intensity, like when communities shake in fear of disasters, leaders fight with their consciences, and regular people face the conflict between faith and fear. These stories are not just lessons. They are vivid, human stories that show how even the smallest choices can be in line with or against God's will. Gabriel is a constant reminder in each story that people who are willing to look for help with honesty and humility can find it. The scrolls also stress that divine wisdom is always present. Knowledge is not kept for the few who are lucky, but for those who show they are ready, patient, and morally clear. The Ethiopian manuscripts are proof of how people and God can work together. Generations of monks and scholars fasted and prayed for decades to protect these texts so that the truth could survive the onslaught of time, conquest, and suppression. Gabriel's hand is clear not only in the messages but also in how carefully the scrolls were kept so that when the time was right, people could learn from them and use them to make the future better. People feel that even in our modern world, we can reconnect with these old truths and let them shape how we live, govern, and get along with each other. The main message of the final revelation is that people need to realize that they are at a very important point in history. Every decision, every act of bravery, kindness, and honesty counts. Gabriel's scrolls don't tell us what to do. Instead, they make us think about our choices and how they fit into both history and God's plan. The manuscripts stress that chaos, lies, and moral failure are always present in human life, but they don't have to be. The same things that caused problems in the past can be fixed by being aware of them, being morally vigilant, and being spiritually committed. Gabriel's advice is both sobering and hopeful. He shows how weak people can be while also showing them how to get better and understand. The scrolls end with a personal look at the possibility of change. Ancient knowledge that was once hidden is now available to everyone. It teaches us how to be humble, think ahead, and have moral courage. They remind us that faith without action, knowledge without understanding, and guidance without humility are not enough. The Ethiopian manuscripts indicate that profound truths are found not in the mere collection of facts, but in the harmonization of heart, mind, and spirit with the enduring principles that Gabriel has protected. The scrolls say that people can accept this wisdom and turn fear into courage, confusion into clarity, and division into unity. The end of the last scroll is like a movie scene that is almost too real to be true. It shows the past and future coming together, the divine and human coming together, and a quiet, strong call to follow a path of understanding, vigilance, and hope. The Ethiopian texts speak across thousands of years through these revelations. They send an urgent and timeless message that knowledge, when used with respect and moral clarity, can clear up confusion, stop disaster, and lead humanity to a future where wisdom and compassion live together. Gabriel's scrolls, which were once secret and not allowed, now show us the way of people and encourage us to think, be brave, and look for the truth. As the last echoes of these old manuscripts fade away, we are left with a deep sense that the story of humanity is not set in stone, but is always changing. It is a story shaped by choice, guided by unseen hands, and can be changed by those who are willing to learn from the lessons that have been passed down through generations of devotion and divine oversight. There are questions that rise in the human mind like sparks from a fire, small, bright, and dangerous. Some fade before anyone notices. Others linger. But there is one question that ancient teachers insisted no ordinary person should ever ask. A question that whispers through old monasteries perched on Ethiopian mountains, through stories carried by wandering monks, through crumbling parchments sealed away from the world. A question that leads back to a single figure who bends the line between heaven and earth, an archangel known for delivering messages, but also for guarding secrets with equal strength. And the unsettling thought that begins this entire journey is simple. What if one of those secrets was never meant to be revealed? This idea hangs in the air like incense smoke, soft, fragrant, and heavy with meaning. Ethiopian tradition holds memories that reach further back than most people realize, stretching through kingdoms, emperors, and spiritual guardians who believed knowledge was not just information, but power. In these stories, there is a suggestion that an angel once carried a revelation so fierce, so world-shaking, that it had to be hidden from humanity because we were not ready to face it. And if that is true, then the place where it was buried would matter just as much as the message itself. Ethiopia, with its rock-carved churches and ancient libraries tucked inside caves, becomes more than a country. It becomes a vault. Imagine standing inside one of those caves. The air is cool, the walls etched by time, and a single candle flickers in the hands of a silent monk. His robe is worn, his footsteps careful across the stone floor. There is nothing modern in this place. No screens, no noise, no distractions. Only layers of history resting in the shadows. The monk knows he is not guarding simple parchment. He is guarding a warning, a puzzle, a truth that once crossed paths with an angel who refused to let it fall into reckless hands. Stories passed down through generations say Gabriel has always moved differently from the other messengers. His words in scripture appear suddenly, sometimes soft, sometimes filled with fire, always marking turning points in the human journey. But what many people forget is that the world of angels is not only about delivering hope or instructions. There are moments where silence becomes part of the divine order. Moments where a heavenly being is given a command not to reveal, but to conceal. And the idea that Gabriel could have been given such a task adds a tension that hangs over this entire documentary. Modern life is filled with spiritual noise, opinions, confusion, questions about identity, about morality, about why the world feels like it's losing its sense of direction. People argue more, listen less, doubt more, trust less. In this chaos, ancient voices can feel distant, like echoes from a forgotten era. Yet the truth is the opposite. These old teachings have never been more relevant. Hidden inside the Ethiopian highlands is a timeline untouched by the filters of modern storytelling. There, history and faith meet without distortion. And in that meeting lies a thread that points toward a mystery connected to Gabriel, one that refuses to disappear no matter how many centuries try to bury it. Picture the early guardians of these scrolls, men who left behind the world's noise and chose silence, discipline, and prayer. Their days were shaped by chants and fasting, their nights spent copying sacred writings by candlelight. They believed every stroke of the pen carried weight. They guarded their scrolls not just from invaders, but from those who might misuse the knowledge hidden inside. Some spoke of pages that were rarely opened. Others hinted at writings so old that even the elders hesitated to speak of them. And within this guarded tradition, there is a rumor, a whisper, that one of these scrolls traces back to something Gabriel did not declare openly, but shielded. Something humanity was never meant to ask about, let alone understand. This idea alone reshapes the way we see Scripture. Gabriel appears at the birth of nations, the rise of prophets, the arrival of the Messiah. He carries messages that shift destinies with a single sentence. His presence causes kings to tremble and shepherds to look upward in awe. But what if his story also includes moments that were never recorded in plain sight? What if there were encounters, warnings, or heavenly conflicts that were hidden for fear of altering the human path too early? That possibility is the spark behind this investigation. A spark that lights up forgotten libraries, remote chapels, worn scrolls wrapped in cloth, and the quiet determination of those who protected them. This is not a journey of fantasy or exaggeration. It is a search for a thread of truth woven through Ethiopian memory, truth that survived invasions, fires, wars, and attempts to erase inconvenient history. The atmosphere around these ancient places tells its own story. Caves carved into mountains where light barely enters. Tunnels where monks walked barefoot for centuries. Stone altars stained with age. Rooms filled with the scent of old parchment. Each space holds a silence that feels alive, as if the walls themselves remember things no human tongue has spoken aloud in generations. When people say Ethiopia carries mysteries the world has overlooked, they are not pointing to myths. They are pointing to history that refuses to bow to outside interpretation. And through all of this, one figure casts a shadow, an archangel known to stand at heaven's gates, at the threshold of revelation, at the edge of cosmic conflict. His name appears in different languages and cultures, yet his role remains consistent: messenger, warrior, protector. But here he appears in a different light, as the keeper of a revelation sealed away from the world. A truth that could shake faith, reshape origin stories, and challenge long-held beliefs about the relationship between heaven and earth. This opening is the doorway. Ahead lies a path filled with hidden manuscripts, forbidden teachings, and testimonies from Ethiopian monks who claim that some scrolls were never written for the public. They were written for guardians. Written for those who understood the weight of secrets. Written for those who believed the world was not ready. And now we begin that path together. You matter to us. If you feel connected to this journey, support the channel. Subscribe. Share this story with someone who needs it. Help us reach 10,000 subscribers. If you feel moved, send a super thanks. And tell us your name, your city, and your time in the comments. Links for the Ethiopian 88-book Bible and the Book of Enoch are placed in the description. Ethiopia is a unique place where history seems to linger in the shadows, telling secrets that the rest of the world has long since forgotten. The mountains rise with a quiet grace, hiding monasteries carved into cliffs that have stood for centuries as guardians of sacred knowledge. Cities like Aksum in the northern highlands have been around for thousands of years. Stones with strange symbols carved into them tell of empires and kings who once lived in a world closer to the divine, where spiritual and earthly power were one and the same. Lalibela looks less like a city and more like a heavenly landscape, as if heaven itself had carved its will into the mountainside. In these hidden parts of the world, time moves differently. Every stone, worn step, and dark room seems to hold stories that the outside world shouldn't hear. There is a certain kind of silence in Ethiopia that lasts for hundreds of years. Debra Damo is quiet because it is on top of a steep cliff that can only be reached by rope and bravery. Inside its old walls, manuscripts are sealed, their pages delicate but eternal, thanks to generations of monks who have devoted their lives to secrecy and devotion. Some of these men have been fasting for decades. Their days are not measured by the sun but by the rhythm of prayer and meditation. They protect texts that contain truths so deep they could make people question everything they think they know about their own past. What is it about these scriptures that scares the world? It could be because these scrolls have survived fires, invasions, and hundreds of years of religious erasure, while the sacred records of the rest of the world were lost to neglect or conquest. In Ethiopia, forbidden scrolls survive where others have been destroyed. They are like whispers that won't be silenced, holding secrets that even the most devoted, curious, and scholarly people have not been able to fully understand. There are both legends and scriptures that link Ethiopia to the biblical world. People often talk about the land in ways that make it sound like they have a special connection to God. Ethiopia has been called a bridge between heaven and earth. The Old Testament talks about the ancient kingdom of Cush and its kings and people. The mysterious Queen of Sheba traveled through deserts and mountains to meet Solomon. Some people say that the Queen of Sheba brought gifts of gold, spices, and knowledge, which may have been secret teachings that were later hidden in the libraries of monasteries. The early Christian presence in Ethiopia is also impressive. Long before most of Europe accepted the new faith, Ethiopian kingdoms had built churches, made illuminated manuscripts, and started a tradition of deep spiritual literacy that would last through centuries of isolation. The air inside these monastic strongholds is almost like something from another world. Candlelight flickers against stone walls, lighting up manuscripts that are bound in leather and covered in glyphs and symbols that hint at truths that only a few people can see. The smell of incense and the faint taste of old parchment fill the air. Every move is on purpose, and every whisper has meaning. Here, knowledge is not just kept safe. It is kept safe as if reading it without permission could wake up powers that the mind is not ready for. Monks chant in languages that most people don't know, and their voices rise and fall in a rhythm that sounds like it comes from eternity. This is a reminder that what they protect is both holy and dangerous. You can feel the reverence in the air. Touching a manuscript without the right ritual is almost like a crime against the monks and the whole history of the world. People who have seen these secret stores, whether they are travelers or scholars, often come back changed. Some people talk about the manuscripts as if they were alive, full of knowledge that goes beyond words and needs to be read slowly, carefully, and with respect. Some people say that certain scrolls, hidden deep within the maze-like passages of Ethiopia's monasteries, hold angelic revelations, prophecies, and teachings that were never included in the main biblical canon. There are even stories of texts that carefully preserved events and people mentioned only briefly in the Bible or not at all by generations who knew how important memory and devotion were. It seems that these writings not only tell stories from the past, but also show a kind of spiritual architecture, a map of moral and cosmic truths that the outside world may not yet be ready to understand. When you think about how much trouble has happened in the area over the years, it's amazing that Ethiopia has been able to protect these old texts. There have been conquerors, empires, and religious leaders, but these scrolls are still safe, hidden away in rooms that are hard to find. This strength may be why both scholars and explorers are drawn to Ethiopia as if by some unseen force. There is an unspoken understanding that these lands hold something that other civilizations lost: the original pulse of faith, a memory of creation, divine interaction, and human responsibility that has survived because it was never meant to be fully exposed to the world. This hidden knowledge, the kind that exists in the space between shadows and light, where history and divinity meet, can be felt in every corner of Aksum, Lalibela, and Debra Damo. When you walk through these holy places, you can see why people say Ethiopia is the last place to keep biblical secrets. Every carved stairway, every frescoed wall, and every sealed manuscript is part of a